For decades, we've all kind of seen Japan through this one particular lens, its pacifist constitution. Well, that's changing. Big time. Japan has drawn a new, very bright red line in the sand, and it runs right through the Taiwan Strait. So, what does this red line actually mean, and why now? Let's get into it. I mean, this shift is so huge, you kind of have to ask a pretty wild question. After more than 70 years, is Japan's era of pacifism actually over? And to even begin to answer that, you've got to listen very, very closely to the words its leaders are using. And believe me, the language here is everything. This isn't just some vague diplomatic mumbo-jumbo. No, Japan's leadership is using a very specific, legally defined term, a situation threatening Japan's survival, to describe a potential war over Taiwan. And that declaration is exactly the seismic event we're going to unpack right now. Okay, so to really get why that one phrase is such a bombshell, we've got to jump in the time machine and rewind a bit. Because this didn't just happen overnight. The groundwork for all of this was actually laid years ago with a law that, honestly, quietly rewrote the entire rulebook for Japanese defense. So let's go back to 2015. The government, then led by Shinzo Abe, passed this new security legislation. And its main goal? To reinterpret Article 9, that famous pacifist clause in Japan's constitution. The whole idea was to give Japan more wiggle room, to move it towards a much more proactive defense posture, basically to get ready for what they saw as an increasingly dangerous world. And this is what came out of it. The law created this whole new legal category, a survival-threatening situation, or STS for short. Now, you really got to pay attention to this definition, because it's the key to everything. It says Japan can act if an attack on a foreign country, one it has a close relationship with, poses a clear risk to Japan's own survival. See, this is a total game changer. And I mean, the change here is just massive. Think about it. Before 2015, the rules were super simple. Japan's military, their self-defense forces, could only use force if Japan itself was attacked, period. That's what we call traditional self-defense. But after 2015, with this whole survival-threatening situation thing, Japan can now use what's called collective self-defense. And that means it can fight to help an ally even if its own shores haven't been touched. So here's the bottom line, the most important takeaway. This law basically opened a legal door for Japan's military to jump into a fight, even if Japan itself isn't the one that gets attacked first. It's a huge shift from being purely reactive to having a potentially proactive military role. Okay, so that brings us right back to today. For years, this was all just theoretical, right? A power they had on the books. But now, Japan's leadership has explicitly taken this powerful legal tool and pointed it directly at one of the most volatile places on the entire planet, Taiwan. So the big question is, why? Well, the first reason really comes down to just one number, 110 kilometers. That's it. It's just about 68 miles. That is the tiny sliver of ocean separating Japan's westernmost island from Taiwan. So you see, this isn't some far-off problem for them. It's literally right on their doorstep. So Japan's argument is pretty straightforward. They're saying, hey, we're so close that any conflict over there would immediately threaten our own islands. But it's not just about the map. Those waters around Taiwan, they are the absolute economic lifelines for Japan. We're talking the ceilings for pretty much all of its imported energy and resources. A blockade there wouldn't just be a minor problem. It could literally cripple the entire Japanese economy. It's an existential threat. So as you can probably guess, this brand new, very public stance from Tokyo did not go unnoticed. China's reaction, it was swift, it was furious, and yeah, it has already started to ratchet up tensions across the whole region. And let's be clear, their response was anything but subtle. Chinese officials came out with a direct, stark warning. They basically said that any Japanese military move on Taiwan would be met with a heavy blow and a crushing military defeat. I mean, that is the language of confrontation, plain and simple. But Beijing's worries go even deeper than that. They've actually suggested that this tough new posture on Taiwan could be the first step towards something even more alarming. From their perspective, Japan ditching its long-held non-nuclear principles. Basically, they see this as a sign of a much, much bigger strategic shift. And, China's reaction wasn't just talk. It kicked off a very clear cycle of escalation. You can see it step by step. First, Japan draws its new red line. Then, China issues its threats. And then, China takes action.
immediately cranking up its Coast Guard patrols around the Senkaku Islands, which, remember, Japan controls but China also claims. It's a very direct message. It's China saying, your new position on Taiwan is going to have real consequences right here, in your own backyard.
So, where does this all leave us? What happens next? Well, the bottom line is that Japan drawing this red line has completely changed the security map of Asia. It's created a tense new reality for absolutely everyone involved. Look, if there's just one thing you take away from all of this, let it be this. A potential war over Taiwan is no longer some distant, hypothetical what-if scenario for Japan. It is now officially defined as a potential threat to the nation's survival. And that means it could legally trigger the use of its military. The line in the sand has been drawn. And that really leaves us with a big final question, doesn't it? In a world that feels more and more unstable every day, is this new stance from Japan a smart, necessary move for self-preservation, or is it a reckless provocation that actually makes a catastrophic war more likely, not less?